My name is Jean-Paul Bédard, and I am not better, but I'm moving that direction. Sexual abuse entered my life for the first time at the age of 9. It was at the hands of a hockey coach. We were at his house. He was having a kind of a pizza party type thing for the whole team, and I had arrived a little bit earlier compared to the other boys on the team, and we were all alone in his basement. And it turned out to be just kind of roughhousing at the beginning, but then it quickly turned into something else. I turned to my dad that evening and explained, in the best way I could what had happened to me. And my father, he was just freaked out, and he felt really powerless. I see that now as a father, what he was probably feeling. My dad contacted the young man's family, and in short order he left the city, and that was the end of it. 3 years after that, I was out in a ravine. I had stolen cigarettes from my father, and I was approached by 2 young men. It turned into a violent rape, and I don't think I'll ever forget the feeling of being face down on the ground. It was in the late fall in Toronto, and the ground was wet and muddy, and I'll never forget being face down in that mud, with my pants down around my knees, and being left alone there when they left, and just feeling completely lost, and having to get up and get dressed and then ride my bike back home, and going back to an empty house, and just feeling so dirty, and not just dirty from the mud that was all over me, but just this dirt that I don't think I'll ever be able to clean off me. It was just a crappy, horrible feeling, and I didn't tell anybody about that. And I think that decision of not coming forward and talking about that has been this stowaway in my life for almost 40 years. And to be perfectly honest, it's almost killed me numerous times. At a young age, I played hockey. I went to a high school, and I got in on a kind of an athletic scholarship into that. Played football, but sports didn't feel the same anymore. I was just associated with the abuse from my past, and I quickly turned to drugs and alcohol, and my teens ended up with me getting in trouble with the law, being arrested, being rushed to the hospital with 2 overdoses. One of them, my heart had stopped. I don't think anybody knew what was going on, because up until that point things were good, but things were not good on the inside. And then when I got married quite young. I was 21 years old. I didn't want to talk about it. I told her a little bit about the incidents with the hockey coach, but nothing about the rape. She didn't know about that at all. The hardest part was when my son was born, because I became hyper vigilant of him. I spent the first 2 years at home, and I'd never wanted him to be out of our immediate sight. But then as he started to hit those ages where the abuse hit my life, it was brutal. It was brutal because I was looking at him, and he just seemed so young. And I remember being that age, having to deal with this stuff. A lot of that kind of pain that I put on myself, like I should have known better. I should have been able to do something. Why didn't I run? Why didn't I do something? I realized, I couldn't. I was just a kid. But it didn't make it any better. It came with a deep, deep sadness that I had lost so many years of my life thinking I should have done something. Much of my teens, and right up until I was about 35 years old, my life was pretty much governed by drugs and alcohol. My last year of drinking was 30 ounces of booze, lots of dope, 3 antidepressants a day, 4 lithium pills a day for my anxiety, my mood stuff, and then I was given Ativan. I was popping those things all the time. At that point, when I was ingesting the most substances possible, I was the least intoxicated of my entire life. It just like was not working anymore. It wasn't numbing me, and that was the only reason I was drinking and drugging, was I was trying to just numb out all of those voices in my head that were telling me, you're dirty, you're worthless. If people knew what was going on inside of you, they would have nothing to do with you. What I needed most at that time was somebody to hold on to, somebody who would tell me things were okay. But because I was walking around in this drug-induced rubber body, none of that good stuff was coming in, and none of the bad stuff inside of me was really able to get out, because I was just totally enwrapped in what I was doing to numb this stuff. I've been sober now, clean and sober now, almost 19 years. And about 16 years into my sobriety, I was really starting to slip back into this feeling that I had a weight inside of me that I just couldn't deal with anymore. And it had to come out, and I had to talk about the sexual abuse. My wife knew a little bit about the hockey coach, but not the extent of what happened. So I sat her down and said, this is what happened with the hockey coach. And she just reached out, she held me, we were at the kitchen table, and I was just crying. I was a mess, and here I was, 47 years old, married for 26 years. We had a son who's 25, and I feel like I'm a kid. And my disclosure was very, very public. So I went from not telling anybody anything to having this discussion first with Marianne, and then later in the day with my adult son. And after I told the two of them what had happened, I went on Facebook later that night and I said, my name is Jean-Paul, and I am a survivor of child sexual abuse. Post. And I put it out there, and I was flooded by support. But the most devastating part of it has been I lost family. All of my brothers and sisters live in the city with me. Not one message, nothing, not a thing. When you have been carrying a secret around your entire life that you feel is completely enmeshed in shame, and then when you finally get enough strength, wherever that strength may come from, to let it go, and then to have it come back at you as, you know what? That is a shameful secret. This is what it feels like when people turn their backs on you. This is part of my passion as I move forward and become an advocate talking about this, is eliminating the taboo around the subject that forces people to turn away. If I want to have people have a discussion about sexual violence in our community and have there not be stigma attached to it, I have to get to a point where I'm able to have that conversation myself. What I'd like to see changed is I'd like to see different relationships between men. There's a lot of talk about being brave. There's a lot of talk about not showing your emotions, particularly around sports. And kids internalize this. And if you are not a survivor of sexual abuse, if you could just entertain the possibility of maybe trying to change some of the relationships in your lives so they're a little more open, a little more vulnerable, a little less superficial at times, you never know. You might be the person who your male friend turns to with a disclosure. I can think of no greater gift